Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the third episode of this podcast. If you have listened to the other ones and you listen to this, thank you so much. And also, if this is your first episode that you're listening to, that's also amazing. Then I can also just mention that, like, in the first episode that I do, then I give like a longer introduction of like myself and why I want to do this podcast and so on, and the goal of this podcast. So feel free to go back and listen to that if you want. But today we're talking with Otto, and it's Otto Barten. So Otto is a physicist, engineer, entrepreneur, and the founder of the Existential Risk Observatory. The topic for this episode will be existential risk. So that's why I brought him in on this. And Otto, like in the past, he had been working on the energy transition by designing wind turbines, and he's also founded a startup company in smart charging. And when he learned about existential risk, however, he decided to retarget his career to what he believes is the most important issue of the 21st century. He therefore founded the Existential Risk Observatory, as mentioned, a Dutch non-profit aiming at reducing human extinction risk by informing the public debate about its most likely causes. He grew the organization to a 6-person team and the first funding, and now serves as its director. As I've said in the first episode of this podcast, at least, that we will be focusing somewhat on like effective altruism and so on. And existential risk is one of the things which a lot of people in the like effective altruism movement are talking about. So that's also why I thought it would be good to talk with Otto about this. To give a better understanding of like what are we talking about when we're talking about existential risk. So this is a 101 conversation about what existential risk is, or X risks. So if you're new to it, I think this is a good episode. But if you already know a lot about existential risk, then I'm not so sure how good this episode is for you. But of course, please give it a listen. Let me know if we missed anything. Let me know if you have any feedback at all. Yeah. Okay, so here is to the conversation between me and Otto Barten. Hi Otto.
Hi, thanks for the hospitality.
Thanks for coming.
Nice meeting you here.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. And especially for the topic of today, which will be like existential risk. Do you want to maybe explain to us like what is like existential risk? Like what's the 101 for that?
Yes, definitely. So existential risk is the risk that we will forgo the future of humanity. So basically, the future of humanity is an extremely big thing, but it's even much bigger, I think, than many people think. So the amount of years that we would have ahead of us is by orders of magnitude larger than the amount of years that we've had as humanity. So far, about 300,000. And also the space ahead, actually, because it's quite likely that we will develop new technology that's even more capable and probably vastly more capable than what we have right now. With that, we could also use the space that's in the universe to a probably bigger extent than what we're doing right now. So the future is an extremely big thing. And existential risks are the way to not have that future. So that could be by human extinction, but it could also be a permanent dystopia. So this is also included in the definition of existential risk, because it would be one way to permanently not have this great future that we have ahead of us otherwise.
Exactly. And how do you work with that?
I'm the founder of the Existential Risk Observatory. And the Existential Risk Observatory is an organization that is trying to reduce existential risk by informing the public debate. Because quite surprisingly, these topics are not really part of the public debate right now. There is scientific research about this. Existential risk is a research field, so there are academics, especially at Oxford and Cambridge universities, that are researching into the most likely existential risks. And also are giving some guidance of how to reduce those existential risks. But it's not really a public debate at this point. And that's what we're trying to change at the Existential Risk Observatory, because we think that it's more that we could reduce existential risk more effectively if we would be informed about the most likely causes.
Exactly, and that's why it's amazing to talk about it here.
Exactly.
I appreciate that. Okay, so how do you feel we should dig deep into this? Like, yeah.
It's probably a good way to go over the most likely existential risks, as the current research is pointing them out, because this is kind of a surprise, actually. When I was getting into existential risk, before I was very much into climate. I was doing sustainable energy technology and doing wind turbine design, for example, and working on a startup. Also doing climate activism, but I was very much into climate, which is really into the societal debate. But I was thinking that, okay, if these are human extinction risks, because this is such a big topic, you would expect this also to be a significant part of the public debate. But surprisingly, it is not. And the most, the existential risks that are actually rated most likely by research are not really the most discussed ones. So maybe we can go over that.
Yeah, let's do that. And so what is that?
Yeah, all right. So that's a nice cliffhanger. So the biggest existential risk so far, according to research, is artificial intelligence. So this would be artificial general intelligence, means basically an AI that could perform at human level across the board, so over many different tasks. Right now we have artificial intelligence that can do one thing pretty good, and in some cases much better than we can, such as playing chess or playing Go or recommending something to you on Spotify. But it cannot do everything at human level. And artificial general intelligence is the hypothetical AI that hasn't been invented yet, that could do everything at least as well as we can. And the risk is then that it could also, or one of the risks is then that it could also self-improve, since it could do anything at least as well as we can. Creating artificial intelligence is also a task that we are doing at this point. We are doing AI research, we're doing hardware research, and we're improving computers' capabilities and AI's capability in this way. So this is now a human task, and by definition, if the AGI can do anything as well as we can, it could also do those tasks as well as we can. So an AI could self-improve, or it could improve other AIs, or there would be some combination of a human plus an AI. But we would be expecting that the AI capability from that point, from AGI, would improve rapidly. And that is a concern there is about whether we could still control this AGI. If it has some purpose that is not our purpose, then we would have a conflict, and it would basically quite likely win out because of its vastly higher intelligence. So that's it may sound a little sci-fi, but it's a main concern of many AI safety academics, many existential risk academics, and also about half, roughly, of the, according to surveys, of the mainstream AI development world. People who are not really into AI safety or existential risk, but just developing AI for commercial purposes or for academic purposes. Okay. About half of those researchers also thinks that there's a significant chance of human extinction because of artificial intelligence.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's such a high number as well.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so it can both be like really, like it can be really bad, but it can also be really good, I guess.
Exactly, right? Yeah. That's. I think that's true for most of the existential risks. Most of the existential risks, the larger ones are technology based, and these are so dangerous because this technology is so powerful. If it wouldn't be that powerful, then it couldn't do much harm either. But because this technology is so powerful, the upside is also quite large. So I agree that AI could also do really awesome things for sure, and it could, if you could automate the people's thinking. We've already automated, of course, our physical capabilities, but if we could also automate our mental capabilities, which is what most of the economy is now running on, that's a very big deal.
Okay, so AI is one of them, or like the biggest one?
According to quantification by Toby Ord. So Toby Ord put numbers on these risks and tried to rank them kind of like from the highest risk to the lower ones. And he says that, or he estimates very roughly that AI has about a 10% chance of becoming or causing human extinction.
Exactly. And for the ones who don't know, who is Toby?
So yeah, good point. Toby Ort is an existential risk academic. He's working at the Future of Humanity Institute in Oxford.
Amazing, thanks. Okay, so what are some of the other big existential risks or the biggest threats?
So what's considered number 2 on the list is biorisk. That means biotechnology, and then especially a man-made pandemic. Because at this point, of course, we have regular pandemics such as COVID and the many others that we've had before. These generally do not cause human extinction, and we've had a 300,000 year track record of not going extinct. So apparently the chance that this happens is really small. So for the next 100 years, this is also quite a small chance, and we're fairly sure that a purely natural pandemic is not going to cause a human extinction. Now we are making some modifications to our world, of course, like factory farming, for example, or going into the wild more and more, and being into contact perhaps with animals that we were less into contact with before. So we should perhaps the risk of natural pandemics is also higher because of those reasons. But still, the chance that a purely natural pandemic is going to cause human extinction is very small. But for man-made pandemics, we don't really have this certainty, because right now, of course, we have access to bioengineering, so we can engineer something purposefully to be harmful. So that's the main risk as well. That at some point in the next 100 years, given the improvements in bioengineering that we can expect, that someone will be able to do that as well, and it's going to. So that's also a main existential risk.
Has there been? Do you know? Has there been any examples of that so far?
I don't think there has been a man-made pandemic so far, excluding COVID. I guess the mainstream. Yeah. So let's not go into that discussion too much. But let's just assume that COVID is for now a natural pandemic.
Yeah.
Then I don't think there has been a man-made pandemic so far. There is a bet though by Martin Rees, one of the founders of the Center for the Study of Existential Risk. He thinks that there's about a 50-50 chance, I think, that there's going to be either a bioterror or bioerror. So either someone is going to commit a terrorist attack with biotechnology, or there's going to be an error, something leaking from the lab, for example, that is going to cause at some point perhaps a man-made pandemic. But so far we didn't have that yet, fortunately, and let's try to make sure that doesn't happen either.
Yeah. Agreed. That would be awesome. Okay, so should we cover some more risks first, maybe, and then maybe go back to them and understand what we can do to prevent them, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, yeah.
So I would say other lists on this of this overview. So I think nanotech is another one. People are a little bit less afraid now of nanotechnology, existential risk, since the progress of the science has not gone as crazy fast as AI, for example, or biotechnology. So mostly because of that reason, this as an existential risk, this is not on the map so much anymore. But in the 90s, people were very worried about nanotechnology as an existential risk. So it's still something to mention, I think.
And what is that?
So it's basically just technology that can manipulate matter on a molecular scale. So on a nanoscale. It can make nanobots, for example, that can have useful medical applications, or it can restructure matter in any way that you would like. So again, something which has a very big upside as well if you can use it wisely and well. But there could also be a big downside.
Good.
This has been called the Grey Goose scenario, by the way. So basically, the scenario is that someone makes a nanobot that's self-replicating, and it can just run on something simple like water, for example, and then it's restructuring all this water into something else, and then this could also potentially go really badly if it's not managed carefully.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard much about that actually. Yeah.
No, that's a fairly. It's not as much now in the attention anymore. But if nanotechnology would really develop rapidly, then this is definitely also something to manage, I think.
Okay, next.
And as maybe so, the last one of the technology based is also an interesting one. Is the unknown unknowns. So what we're now trying to do is forecast the existential risks for the next 100 years. But of course, no one has a clue what the next 100 years of scientific progress is going to look like. So you can compare it to if you would have done this exercise in 1920, then you would not have known really about nuclear technology. You wouldn't really have known about climate change in much detail. You would not really have known about artificial intelligence or nanotechnology or all these other things that are now on the map. So probably you're missing out the most important risks. And of course, scientific development is continuing and scientific technology is steadily improving. So it's quite likely that you're also missing actually potentially the highest risks if you're just because we simply don't know yet what the technology is going to look like for the next 100 years. So unknown unknowns are also something to keep track of, and it's kind of an abstract category, and it can be hard to think of what to do about it. But I guess we'll go into that next anyway. So
yeah, wow, okay.
And maybe it's also interesting to mention the things that are not too high on the existential risk list, because these are actually the things I think that most people will be thinking of. And one is nuclear, of course, nuclear war. Nuclear war could definitely cause human extinction through nuclear winter. Not really through the bombs themselves, because this is more or less a local thing, an atomic bomb. So if you actually would like to extinguish humanity by only using nuclear bombs, the direct effect, and it's pretty hard actually. And this is very unlikely to take place, fortunately. But there is also nuclear winter. There has been research about this, and it seems fairly likely, although I don't think there's complete scientific agreement on this. But that nuclear bombs could also cause nuclear winter by burning a city, and then there would be soot transmitted into the atmosphere, high into the atmosphere, which would not rain down anymore, and therefore it would basically obliterate the sun and reducing the global temperatures by something, I think, in the order of magnitude of 10 degrees or something. So a really drastic climate effect. And that could also be the first step of human extinction potentially. So, but quite a lot would need to happen. You would need to have an atomic war, and then also these bombs need to be dropped in sufficient quantity to actually cause a nuclear winter, and that must happen. And then you would also need to have complete human extinction because of it. So it doesn't seem very likely, even though an atomic war itself is probably more likely. But this is only estimated at 1 in 1,000 probability, which is fairly small for an existential risk compared to the previous ones. And then climate, I guess, is
yeah, that's a big one.
Let's just finish these.
The list.
Finish the list. It's not the most uplifting topic, but it's very interesting. Academically, it's very interesting, and what I think is really fascinating is that we're not really trying to reduce the existential risk in a structured way. While you would say that this should be the highest priority for many institutes, but it's not really in practice. So I think that's super interesting that there's so much low-hanging fruit there, and still the topics are so important that it's really interesting to look into. And climate change, maybe to finish not quite finish the list, but this is definitely also one that's very high on the public agenda, which is very good, I think. Climate change is an example of a topic that is very important, and there's also a lot of attention for it. So that's basically good. I think personally we should have solved it maybe 20 years ago. We are solving it now, I would say personally. That's late, but it is happening. So I would say, this is something that's very serious, but there's also a lot of attention for it. And as an existential risk, so to cause actual human extinction only by climate change, that seems to be quite a small probability. Although it's not zero, because the speed at which we're emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, that has never happened before, actually. It has never gone so fast as what we're doing now. The temperature increase, that has happened before, so that seems to be safe, at least in the sense that we're not going to have any runaway effects only because of the temperature increase, probably. but the speed is something new. So it could be that there's an unknown effect that we don't really see in climate models, and that's going to lead to some kind of a horrible outcome. So the chance is small, and I think it's not there's not too much research on this. But by Toby Ort he's claiming that there's about a 1 in 1,000 probability for this one. So it's also one of the smaller existential risks.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because that's some of the things we're talking the most about. But I guess also maybe not from the view of existential risk, but just because of like the problem, like with plastic pollution. Yes. Like, for example, like just like many people caring about it because it in itself is like an important area, but maybe not like the most important to focus on.
Yeah, I think so too, for sure. This is it's definitely important for non-existential reasons, mostly to do something about climate change or to try to make it not too bad at least. But for the existential risks, it's considered a relatively minor one.
Yeah. That's good to hear, actually.
Some good news here as well. Yeah.
It's a pretty dark episode with existential risk.
Existential risk. It's not. It is fun to work on, surprisingly, but it's it's not always easy to think about. It's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So cool. Should we then? Well, like, is that the list, or are there any other you think?
Perhaps we haven't covered the natural existential risks yet. So, for example, supervolcanoes and asteroid strikes. These are the most prominent natural existential risks. And asteroid strikes are especially well known, actually, because we have a pretty good data on how many bodies there are in the universe that could come down to Earth, and what the size of that would be. And we also have geological data, so we can estimate pretty well what the chances of an asteroid strike here, of at least of the size that could make us go extinct. We also have a starting defense system. NASA recently did some work on deflecting something like an asteroid, so we can quite likely actually do something about it. And we also have a detection system, so it's fairly likely that we can see it coming. So we know that the chance is very small, and we can also quite probably do something about it. So that's actually one of the risks that existential risk community is least worried about, I think. Cool. And supervolcanoes are somewhat less well understood, and there's not that much, I think, that you can do about it right now. But it is a very well-known probability, because you simply know how many times a supervolcano has erupted in the past, so you can put a pretty good probability figure on the how likely it is that this would happen now, and it does seem very unlikely. So it's also not the most prominent one that we have to worry about right now, I think.
Are there any other natural existential risks?
I think this is kind of the list right now. So I think we're through now. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
There must be others as well. Actually, Toby Ort is also including a category others, and I've included nanotechnology from that category because I think that's a relatively prominent one. But there are definitely a lot of other existential risks as well, but with very small probabilities. So I think this list is probably the most important one.
Yeah. Amazing. So we have moved through the list of like the biggest existential risks and threats. But you're working with communicating this, which is one way to help us not end up getting one of the risks take over our world, I guess. If that's the right way to say it.
This is no, definitely. I think communication is an important part for sure, and people are trying to develop different strategies to reduce those risks, which is actually one reason that they're now. So Toby Ort was estimating them roughly at 1 in 6. So the roll of a dice, or perhaps a game of Russian roulette, were the metaphors that he was using.
Wow.
This is. And he said if there would be no action taken, he would estimate more like 1 in 3. So it definitely does matter a lot what we're doing to reduce those risks. There's a lot of leeway actually to do something about it, I think.
Yeah. So what are the ways we can go ahead to reduce the risks?
I think right now it's research is definitely a big part of this. So right now, so Toby Ort wrote The Precipice, which is one of the key works on this, but there aren't a lot of other books, and there are some researchers. There may be 50 to 100 researchers or something along that line, along those lines. But not too many. So I think if we would emphasize this much more on research, it's obviously an important topic. So I think there would be a lot of universities, for example, that could be doing research on this that are not yet. So that's a big opportunity, I think.
Nice.
So research is definitely a big part of what you can do about it. And apart from this, it also depends on the existential risk that you're looking at. Different risks require different treatments. For example, the unknown unknowns, that's really, it's a really difficult one. So if you just have an institution there that's looking out for potential existential threats, that would help a lot already. And doing research into this, making sure that you follow the latest scientific developments and that you're looking out for something that's replicable, for example, or that expands in some uncontrollable way, or that has the potential to do so. I think that could really be helpful for the unknown unknowns too. Again, research is a big part, I think.
Exactly. And can you just explain the word replicable?
If something replicates, such as a virus, for example, a virus has one virus can reproduce and it can grow inside your body, and then of course it can jump to other people. So there's an unchecked replication of this, and if something behaves in that way, it's usually connected to exponential growth. Then it means it could get out of hand quite quickly. So it's important to control it, and in some way.
Is that kind of, it may be out of track here, but is that kind of like with like invasive species? Like they come one place and then just like bam, they're like everywhere and taking over.
Yeah, it's the same. I think it's it's definitely a useful way to think about it. I think, and of course those species are not taking over in an existential risk way, but it is progressing in the same method. I think, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Do we have some other ways of? Okay, so we said research.
Yeah, some more things that we can do about it. I think regulation in general is also a big part of the solution for many of these existential risks. It does depend which risk, and there's a lot of leeway in regulation. You could try to regulate things in such a way that the best actor or the most responsible actor is getting first to a technology, and then they can produce it in a way that's least risky. But you can also try to apply the precautionary principle. So this means that basically you will not develop a technology until it is proven to be safe. But then someone would also need to maintain that precautionary principle. So that for sure requires regulation as well.
Is that with like open AI stuff, maybe, or like open source stuff? Like, I don't have much knowledge about it. I'm just throwing out some words here that I think is relevant. If we focus on AI, then I think
indeed you have these two ways of managing risks are probably the most important ones. So for safety, this is the field of AI safety that's trying to make AI as safe as possible, or AI alignment also. And big AI companies such as OpenAI, but also DeepMind, are trying to align AI, and they do have AI safety departments. And also outside of those companies in academia, there is an increasing amount of research into how to create AI safely. So that's definitely one approach that's being tried. AI regulation could be another approach. It can be pretty hard as well, because if you regulate leading companies such as OpenAI and DeepMind, but do not change what other people could be doing, then hardware progress is probably going to continue. So the hardware is going to get better and better on which the AI can run. And right now we still have a situation where only a few companies are able to amass enough hardware and get enough data and get the experts there to work with the really leading models. But at some point, if you regulate those companies and hardware progress continues, perhaps we get into a situation where a lot of people can do this. And that would actually make it harder to regulate. So regulation is an option. But regulating only the leading actors also could increase the risk as well.
And to get into regulation, then it's like policy and so on. Like
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And people are definitely working on that as well. For example, AI Gov is trying to work on policy, and other Future of Life Institute and others as well. Yeah.
Amazing. I will also like of everything we say of like resources and so on and names, I will just put them in the description so people can check it out.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great.
Also, the book of Toby Ord. Yeah, as you mentioned a lot.
I think really good, that's right, because there's not too much work on existential risk, so we really have to cite the few things that are there, or at least the few proper books. But maybe I can use the opportunity to point to a few other ones that are also useful.
Yeah,
especially for AI. Human Compatible by Stuart Russell. Stuart Russell is a leading AI professor. And Human Compatible is his book where he points out his view on existential risk, but also his way of dealing with this. He's trying to do research for AI safety as well to make sure to align AI to our values. And another one is Superintelligence. That's kind of the seminal work of the field, you might say, by Nick Bostrom. Nick Bostrom is working with Toby Ord at the Future of Humanity Institute. And he has, he's one of the founding fathers, I would say, of the field of AI safety. And his book is really outlining. He's a philosopher, but he's outlining in a lot of detail how AI could cause an existential risk and what the things are to keep track of. So that's Superintelligence by Bostrom.
Amazing. Thanks. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we have research. Regulations, communication we touched on a little bit, or do you want to go deeper into that maybe?
Yeah, we can definitely expand on that, I think.
Yeah, cool.
Communication is useful, I think, for both of these solution directions. And perhaps it's good to also mention a third one, that's other solutions. Some things are not regulation and not AI safety, or another technology safety, but are still at least aimed at reducing existential risk. And a nice example, I think, is Neuralink by Elon Musk. He's also definitely concerned by AI existential risk. And his approach is to link the human brains with AI, because through Neuralink. And in that way, there would still be some control, some human control at least, of the AI. So while I personally don't think that this solution is going to work, it's definitely an interesting approach, and it's interesting to see that there are also things that are not safety and regulation and also being tried. But yeah, in terms of communication, I think communication should help with all three of these solution directions. So if we communicate this to the societal debate so that it becomes more of a mainstream topic, then it should help for regulation. I think for regulation, it's kind of easy to see, and it's necessary to have an informed society to be able to regulate things in general. Especially if this regulation also has downsides, then it needs to have a clear reason to implement it. So for regulation, it's an obvious thing that helps, but also for AI safety, you need talent. It's not super funding constrained because it does have a lot of billionaires and tech CEOs, people like Elon Musk, people like Bill Gates, Jan Tallinn. They're investing in AI safety research. So there is generally money to do this research, but it is coming from few sources. So it would also be healthy, I think, if this would be coming also from governments, for example. If governments would, any government, I think right now there's only maybe 300 people working on AI safety and existential risk in the world. And any government has the power to double that. So that could really be an impactful change, I think. So that's something that informing the societal debate could do. So talent, funding, I would say more institutes working on it, universities working on it, for example. Higher robustness of a solution. It's kind of a still white and male topic and kind of Anglo-Saxon. And I think it would be really useful if this is more broadly known and also more broadly debated and solved in the end. So.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did you have something?
So I think these are definitely important reasons to communicate. What's interesting is that communication has been done by people, for example, by the author of Superintelligence, Nick Bostrom. He has given interviews. Toby Ord has given interviews. So this topic has been put on the public agenda, and of course also by people such as Elon Musk. But it's still a relatively niche topic, or at least I don't have the feeling that the arguments have been laid out well enough for people to do much about it. So I think there's still a big chance of, also because there seems to be quite a bit of funding in existential risk reduction because of the interest of those billionaires. So I think there's a big opportunity to do public outreach much better, and I'm happy that you're also helping on this with the podcast right now. So.
Yeah, thank you too.
My pleasure. And this is also what the observatory is doing, of course. So that's exactly why I've set up this this nonprofit. Maybe should I go a little bit into that, or?
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah, definitely.
Of course.
So yeah, my background was more into climate and not that much into existential risk. But when I did get into existential risk, I quickly noticed that there was a lot of attention for trying to technically solve AI safety, especially. But not that much into trying to raise awareness about this, to perhaps help with regulation approaches, and also not that much in raising awareness. I think is really useful in many ways. Even if you would solve AI safety technically, for example, then it's still a big question of who has the power over this AI. Then you're going to have this massively controllable, apparently, but still massively powerful technology, and it's a very big question. I think who's controlling this, and I think it would really benefit from a democratic discussion about this topic to hopefully control it also in a democratic way, so that it would be useful for everyone. That's one thing. Another thing is if you have AI safety, you still have to implement it everywhere. So that would also probably need some kind of regulation. So there are many reasons, and also for the other existential risks, there are many reasons why I think that everyone should be informed about this, and we should try to make a coordinated response so that we reduce as effectively as possible the existential risks.
Can people take part in your organization? Like how?
Yes, we do work with volunteers. So if people would want to help us, I think in general people can take part in communicating this. So I would say my advice, if you would like to reduce existential risk yourselves, is first very much read into the topic. That's very useful. You really want to have a detailed knowledge of what exactly is happening, and also talk to some people that are working on this. That's definitely useful. Some people could still fund, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for most of us, because there's already a lot of funding from tech billionaires going into this. So if you do happen to have a lot of money, and you do happen to know people who are still constrained by funding, then this could also be useful. But something a bit easier, I think, is to talk to people around you. That's important, especially if you have a platform, if you know journalists, but also on a smaller scale through friends and family. Perhaps you are working at a university, then you could do research yourself. Perhaps you're a student at the university, you could talk to professors or your faculty, and try them to do research on existential risk or on AI safety or related topics. I think you could also change your career, especially many junior students aren't really sure what they should do, but they do want to have an impact. If you're in that position, then you could talk to people at 80,000 hours, for example, or even if you're more senior in your career, you could also talk to people over there and get advice on how to make your career the most impactful possible. And especially if you're interested in existential risk, then they should be able to point you in the right direction of what's the best way for you to reduce those risks. And related, you could also visit a local chapter of effective altruism. Effective altruism is a movement that's trying to do the most good possible. Perhaps you've already introduced this in different episodes, or perhaps not.
It's mentioned a lot, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you.
So this is also they're very interested in existential risks as well. So it's definitely useful to talk to people there and get pointers on where to go to reduce those risks. So I think these are the most prominent ways that I can think of, at least, to reduce existential risk. And one important point, I think, is that you can actually do quite a lot, probably, because there are quite a few people working on this. Perhaps globally, about 300 people are actually full-time working on reducing existential risks. And that's a very small number.
That's a very small number.
So if you are number 301, then you can really make a difference. There are loads of very neglected things. For example, one nice example that I know of, that the nuclear winter has been modeled between for an atomic war between the US and Russia, or the former Soviet Union, perhaps. But it hasn't been done for a nuclear exchange between China and the US, for example. So basically, we don't really know if there would be a nuclear winter in such case, which is kind of crazy, because it's a very high impact thing. It's not even that unlikely, perhaps, for the next 100 years. And you would really want to have that information, but simply no one looked into it yet. So it's quite a neglected topic with a lot of low-hanging fruit. So that's really the fun as well from working in this, especially if you're working for one of those organizations for some time. Then I'm pretty sure that you're going to have ideas on how to make things better and how to reduce risks more effectively. So there's really a lot of opportunities still there.
Amazing, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of advice. So I hope that people will, maybe get involved and also reach out and read the books and so on. I'm also going to read The Precipice.
Yeah.
Is that how
definitely.
I say it? Do you think so?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, because I just got it. So then, I'm looking forward to that. And also, it would be awesome to talk at a later time when also my knowledge is much better at this topic. So but so how? I'm curious about what are your plans ahead?
So for the Existential Risk Observatory, it's one of the organizations that's also still having a lot of low-hanging fruit. So we started by just piloting and see if a small organization could significantly increase the existential risk debate in one country, which is my home country, the Netherlands. And that has worked. So now we're thinking of how to expand it most effectively. We just got the first funding from Survival and Flourishing Foundation and the International Center for Future Generations to those organizations are in turn funded by people who really care about the future of humanity. So that's nice. But with this funding, so what we want to do is expand as efficiently as possible. So now we're mostly researching in what's the most effective outreach option. We've piloted op-eds in newspapers and also reaching out to journalists and leaders of the societal debate and trying to get a societal debate going. But perhaps we haven't done much with social media actually yet, and also not a lot with some other methods of outreach. So we want to test what's actually the most effective way of improving people's knowledge position on this.
Amazing. Do you have any last thoughts?
So I think we covered quite things quite extensively already. So I'm really happy with the space that you're giving here, and with all the all the podcasts that you're making, not only on this topic but no doubt also on many other very important topics that are covered here. So thanks a lot for the opportunity to increase the knowledge of people on these topics. I think it's very important, and I hope that many people are going to be inspired to at least read into the topic, but also talk about it, and in the end, reduce existential risk, because that's of course an important thing. So thanks a lot for giving the opportunity to do this.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Otto. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. X risk is so much, and I still have a lot to learn, I know, but hopefully we learn a little bit more. And if you want to learn even more about it, then remember to check the description for all the relevant links about what we talked about. I have also decided to not run any ads on this podcast, so if you would like to support this podcast, you can become a patron or something. Like, I will leave some links in the description for more ways to support it if you'd like. And as well, as this is the start of the podcast, I would really, really appreciate like any feedback that you have. And if there's any topics you think should be talked more about, and if you have any specific guests, please let me know. Like, I would love to know. And yeah, I think that's it. I really hope you enjoyed or learned something new, and I hope I will see you, or we will talk in the next episode. Okay, bye bye.